Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Tyler, and today we're going to be talking about why the house fight, aka the final fight that the kids have in Cobra Kai Season 3, is probably the best fight, or best final fight in the entire series, and why it works. I know you guys are saying, well, technically the final fight in Season 3 was Denny and Johnny versus Chris. Yeah, I know. I'm talking about specifically for the kids, and we're going to be explaining why the house fight works. This is probably one of the best sequences in all of Cobra Kai, so I hope you guys do enjoy this breakdown slash analysis type video and me explaining why the house fight is so good. And if you guys want more videos like this or more analysis, let me know down below. And now we are going to be transitioning into the actual video, so I hope you guys genuinely do enjoy, and let's break down why the season 3 finale is honestly perfect in my opinion.
Hey, collecting rings like a Sonic. Bitches wanna party. My wrist getting heavy, so got 'em on a diet, yeah. Flex like I'm holding. Yo, bitch coming over. Yeah, we respect.
Okay, so I guess the first breakdown we can go over before we get into like the narrative and all that stuff, those kind of aspects, I guess we can talk about the visual representation or the fight as a fight in itself. So if we just look at this fight as in, you know, like no narrative aspect or whatever, just the choreography, the visual representation, and all that stuff taken into account, I think this fight is honestly still at its best when it comes to Cobra Kai. You see, in Cobra Kai, we do have some pretty big fights, and some of them are pretty good, and some of them are, well, not so good. For example, some of the fights that are kind of just not that good or not as good as some of the other fights in the series or in its own season is the mall fight. You see, one in comparison to the school fight, the choreography and overall the representation isn't that good. You know, it's really wonky with the camera angles because they're trying to show off the spin technique, but it just doesn't look good. Even the school fight itself had some pretty weird shots in my opinion. You know, we had Demetri versus Hawk, which is good for the narrative, but as a fight, it's really wonky, and by itself, it kind of sucks. However, for this fight, I think we can actually make an exception because most of the fighting is generally pretty good. Obviously, we still have kind of the moving camera that we constantly get in Cobra Kai where it shows some of the fights and then it transitions into another fight with just one, you know, camera rotation, which is fine for this fight because there is a lot going on. And I think the choreography for the fight, it just captures everything pretty well and overall what the fight is trying to tell us. And that is Miyagi Fang now having to try and work together, and we see this during the fight. We see Assface picking up Demetri, Demetri literally helping out Bert and Nathan, both who were, you know, a Miyagi-Do student and a Cobra Kai student. Just the camera blatantly catches everything that's going on. We know how intense the situation is. It's not less intense than it should be. It's not more intense than it should be. I think the camera, the visual representation, and overall, just without the narrative and just the fight itself is well done. If you want to say visually the school fight is better, then I guess, but when I get into the narrative aspect of this fight, you'll see why personally this fight is just so fucking good. And also, to push this point kind of further to home, we even get more of this visual representation, especially when Demetri is being saved by Assface, who previously was trying to leave the household because they didn't want to work with Miyagi-Do. And that's what we call showing and not telling, which honestly is a good trope in itself. So yeah, more to push further home that the visual representation and what the fight is trying to convey to us just by showing us a bunch of characters fighting. This was clearly made intentionally, and we can see and appreciate Cobra Kai's fight in itself is really well done, and the narrative pushes this fight infinitely more, in my opinion. And with that being said, that concludes our, you know, point with the visual representation, the choreography, and everything else without the narrative being even taken into consideration yet. It's already pretty solid. The only nitpick I really have is the fact that at the beginning of the fight, when we see Tory pull up, we clearly see Miguel being able to communicate with Tory, which is kind of giving us an implication that he's right in front of her. But when the fight starts, Miguel and Sam are completely elsewhere, and Chris is fighting Tory. It's kind of funny because this is something similar that happened in the school fight when Hawk and Miguel are in the same class, but Miguel gets out later than Hawk, even though their classes are the same. In all honesty, it's kind of funny since this is kind of a callback to what the end of Season 2 did. Though I'm pretty sure this wasn't intentional. I think, you know, it's not that big of a deal and it can definitely be passed off. Especially when we get into the narrative aspect, which I've been on about and just been talking about getting to it, so we're just going to get into it now. So for me to talk about the narrative aspect of this fight, I think we can only break this down, honestly, in 3 sections. The first section will be the Sam and Tory section, the second section will be the Hawk and Demetri section, and the third section will be the Miguel section. Now, the first section I'm going to be talking about, which honestly is my least favorite narrative moment, honestly, and that's the whole fight between Sam and Tory. Now, that's not to say Sam and Tory are bad characters, because in this season, they're honestly at their best. But I just simply don't think the Sam and Tory arc is nearly as interesting or as significant as the Hawk and Demetri arc and the Miguel arc, but I'll be getting into that a little later. Now, Sam this arc had something a little bit different from the other characters, and that was something that actually called back to Karate Kid 3, which was the fear factor, which we never really got to see ever since the whole Mike Barnes situation back in Karate Kid 3, and this is actually referenced to Sam, and this is a way to basically explain to Sam that she shouldn't have fear, and losing to fear is never okay. Now, you guys could potentially call this lazy and say how, oh, they just gave Sam an arc that Daniel already went through, oh, this is lazy writing. But honestly, I think the fear factor is something kind of different for us to see, and honestly, this is the best arc Sam's ever gotten, so I'm not really complaining. Sam's arc this season is her realizing that she is kind of the problem, and she needs to try and fight back. However, when she tries to fight back, she then succumbs to fear from the person she literally beat, which is a little strange in my opinion, especially when we get to the Hawk breaking Demetri's arm scene, and us just watching Sam cry has to be honestly the hardest scene in the entire show. Not because narratively it's bad, but because at this point, Sam kind of started it and she needs to finish what she started, and she just let her friend get his arm broken. Yeah, it's a little strange with Sam's arc, but by the end of things, she decides to overcome her fear because, you know, Tory broke that picture of Miyagi, which was a little nice moment, and at this point, this was the first time in the series where I was truly rooting for Sam. Like, most of the time, she just causes problems that she says she doesn't cause, but in Season 3, she realizes that she is part of the problem, and she tries to at least redeem herself, fails, but by the end of it, she does redeem herself. And as for Tory, we get to see a different side of her character, which we get to, I guess, feel a little bit more sympathy for her because of her bad home life. And I do like how Tory isn't going to be redeemed. I definitely don't see her being redeemed at all, rather being fully committed to Cobra Kai, especially after what Kreese did to her landlord, which, by the way, probably one of the most goated moments for Kreese. Anyways, I think this season further kind of solidified Tory's placement in Cobra Kai into her commitment, which honestly I do like, even though Tory is someone with who she thinks has good intentions. She's just kind of at this point a crazy ass bitch, which doesn't really bother me, but she kind of went a little too far when she broke that picture of Mr. Miyagi. Like, what bitch, get the fuck. Nah, chill, but regardless, I think Tory's arc was just her being further placed into Cobra Kai and her just kind of going down this dark path a little further. And so I think Sam versus Tory and that whole fight going down, and overall just the narrative significance of it is, you know, it's fine. It's not bad necessarily, but it's definitely not nearly as significant as the other 2 sections we are about to cover. So this arc, we mainly saw Tory just spiraling down a darker path, and we kind of, I guess, gained more sympathy for her. And as for Sam, Sam is kind of hard to watch until the end. However, it is pretty satisfying at the end. Now we will move on to the Hawk and Demetri section. I know, finally guys, we're getting into the good shit of Season 3. Now, the main thing we get from this arc is Hawk and Demetri's relationship being changed, and further showing Hawk's confliction and him returning to the good side. This arc, for the majority, is focusing on the character of Hawk. Now, that isn't to say we didn't see obvious development for Demetri. We clearly saw this at the final episode where the fight took place, when we literally see Demetri telling Assface and Bert to work together, even though he doesn't fuck with Cobra Kai. So this season is pushing a more confident and more serious Demetri, and we see a lot more of this, especially when we see Yasmin and Demetri get together, the one girl who was literally creeped out by him. And it's just more evolution for Demetri to become a Chad, you know? It's not really a significant arc, but the arc is still there. Now, as for Hawk, his arc is still the same one that he was going through, which is this spiraling dark path. Now, people like to say that this arc was rushed, and especially since Hawk already went kind of objectively too far down, it was kind of weird for him to come back all so sudden. But this is my take on the matter. Clearly, Hawk was never too far gone. Every single action that he was committing that was sending him down this darker path, he kept on hesitating. We saw him with the Demetri fight after he broke his arm. He was hesitating and clearly had regret on his face and hesitation. We see this further when Asphates gets kicked out of the dojo and Hawk tries to stand up for him, but Kreese just denies this. And I think by the time Robbie comes in, I think we clearly see Hawk now seeing the flaws in Kreese's ways. You see, we see Johnny previously, before we even get to Robbie, we see previously with Hawk and Johnny's confrontation when Johnny says how he made him what he was, not Kreese. We clearly saw hesitation on Hawk's face, and even when talking to Miguel, he was willing to listen to Miguel. Like, there are multiple signs in this season where Hawk is willing to consider joining the other side, or at least giving the other side a chance. However, Hawk is a character who really lusts for power and all this stuff that he once lacked, which is the whole point of his character. So obviously he's going to stay in Cobra Kai because it makes him feel stronger. However, the nail in the coffin wasn't Miguel or Johnny or something that quote-unquote made it seem so random. It was the fact that Hawk went on this mission, specifically to go and get the Cobra for Kreese. We see him say to Kyler how he put the entire plan together, making him the leader of this operation. However, when Robbie got the snake, Kreese just gave him all the credit. We see Hawk put this plan together, you know, a little bit more of his Eli side coming out, using the brains of the operation to try and, you know, get them the Cobra. But Robbie just took all the credit. And Kreese was saying how Robbie showed all of this fearlessness and all this strength, but Hawk was the one who came up with the entire plan. It's like if you and your homie did a science project and the one person who didn't do anything started talking about the project, acting like he knew what he was doing and got all the credit, but you didn't. That's some fuck shit. And I think at this point, Hawk is at his most conflicted ever. And when we get to the house fight, which people like to say, oh, well, they broke in and Hawk now changes. Oh, this is weird. First of all, we don't even know who threw Bird out the window. We know that, yeah, I guess they did break in. However, I don't think that's enough of a justification when we see clearly conflict in this character after explicit bad actions are made. So I don't think, oh, well, because he broke in, oh, it's just too late for him to be redeemed. Like, that's so stupid in my opinion. This arc was built up for Hawk. He was supposed to go down this bad path, but see the flaws in his ways and return. Return to the side where he always belonged. Return to the side where he had true friends like Demetri, Miguel. And I think Hawk finally sees his flaws once he dabs up Kyler. You know, they do a little handshake, and then Kyler says how these suckers never had a chance. The bully that was bullying him, they are now working together. Clearly, this isn't the only thing that made Hawk realize this is a combination of everything, as we hear all these, you know, old moments coming through Hawk's head. Johnny saying how he made him what he was, not Kreese, and all this other stuff. And at that point, we see Hawk seeing his old best friend about to get his arm broken, and Doug would then call out for Hawk to then finish him. Hawk then sees his wrongs and redeems himself by defeating the two people holding Demetri in this position. He and Demetri then forgive each other, which Demetri immediately accepts, showing how the two truly have missed each other despite being enemies for almost the entire season at this point. And the two then fight together, the binary brothers Eli and Demetri, which honestly is probably the best team up moment in the entire series. Like, if you even try and say the mall fight is even close to this, like, get out of here, bro. Demetri and Hawk have the best team up moment in the entire series. Now finally we get into Miguel, which I covered everything in a Miguel video in itself, which you guys can go check out on my most recent video other than this one. It's literally right below this video. Go check it out. But anyways, I'll just go over briefly Season 3 Miguel. Obviously, he's been defeated ever since the end of Season 2. Has been conflicting, doesn't even know what to do anymore. We clearly see this in his first scene with Johnny. where he cries to Johnny and being confused as to why he paid the price when he did the right thing. We see Johnny and Miguel starting back from square one. However, Miguel is having an even worse start than he did before. There are so many moments where Miguel could just give up mentally and physically, but he never does. This character has been just holding the will and fight and the philosophy that Johnny Lawrence, his sensei, gave him. And all this fight in him allowed him to defeat the bully that was just beating him up literally the entire episode, the bully that he once defeated back in season 1. But obviously because he's crippled and Kyler knows karate, Miguel has an extreme disadvantage. However, in one scene where we see him, listening to Johnny's words saying to never give up and that he has all this fight within him, motivates Miguel, and finally he is able to use and bring out the power he once had, and now he finally defeats his old bully. I know the Miguel section was a little short, but I literally had an entire video covering not only his house fight arc, but the entire arc he went through in season 3. So if you guys want more of a breakdown like that, you guys can go check out that video. And with that being said, there's really nothing else for me to talk about in season 3. Obviously, we have characters like Chris and Assface becoming together, but that's just kind of the whole point of the fight. Like, obviously, I don't have to say, oh, well, these two sides who were fighting for so long are now working together to defeat the new Cobra Kai. Like, it's obvious, those things are there, and I already went over that. I just went over the important stuff and why the house fight to me works, and it's really, honestly, amazing. And yeah, guys, that's my take on the Season 3 house fight. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys want more Season 3 analysis or just any Cobra Kai analysis in general, let me know down below. Be sure to leave a like, share with your friends, subscribe if you are new to the channel, hit the bell icon, that way you are updated and notified when I upload, and be sure to follow my Twitter. If there are any Cobra Kai YouTubers who are down to collab with me, let me know down below, as, I kind of want to make this a main content of mine. Just hit up my Twitter or go add me on Discord, TyLearn, #6380. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to see you guys in the next video. Holy shit, this is 16 minutes long. Peace out, guys. See you guys. Hope you guys have a nice rest of the day.